They have been in Birmingham. They were in Selma last night. I understand that everything went so good there. And of course, we expect nothing less today here. We have with us the infamous and the auspicious Mr. Roland.Martin. Give him some love as it. And he's going to be the guest host today. And of course, Sister Sheila Smoot is going to come now, take her place, and after that, she will direct traffic from there. Have a good time. God bless you. I got to leave, but I want to stay, but I got to go. Amen? Bye-bye.
Thank you, Pastor. Please give our guest church who have allowed us to come to you today, and our pastor, he does have another event. Can we give him a hand before he leaves? Thank you so much for having us here. We are very honored to be in your presence today. How many of you know Roland.Martin? How many of you know we're TV1? How many of you watch TV? Ah, there you go. Roland.Martin is just somebody that we need. He is our voice in Black America today. He is the progressive voice in Black America today. And you're going to be in for a treat. We wanted a small crowd. We always go to a church, a very intimate crowd. So without further ado, Roland.S.Martin is the host of TV1's News One Now and the senior news analyst on the nationally syndicated Tom Joyner Morning Show. How many of you listen to that? Martin frequently appears as a guest on ABC This Week with George Stephanopoulos. He'll be there tomorrow. You can watch him. MSNBC and our other national networks. He spent 6 years as a political contributor to CNN. Named by Ebony Magazine 4 times as one of the 150 most influential African Americans in the United States, Roland.S.Martin has received numerous accolades for his work as a TV host, journalist, author, and political commentator. In 2017, Roland.S.Martin won his 3rd NAACP Image Award for the first ever Best Host category. Roland has won more than 30 professional awards. He's been Journalist of the Year. He's been winning awards. He's been with NABJ, National Association of Black Journalists, National Association of Minorities and Cable, and the National Associated Press Managing Editors Conference. More than 100 organizations has recognized Roland for his brilliant journalistic career and the commitment to advancement of African Americans. All of you know Roland.Martin does not back down. Even to you, get ready. Folks, it's going to be a great day. Roland.Martin has come to Alabama for a special message to you. Roland.S.Martin, his initiative, is school choice a black choice?
Genius. But if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, today on trial we have modern day schooling. Glad you could come. Not only does he make fish climb trees, but also makes them climb down and do a 10-mile run. Tell me, school, are you proud of the things you've done? Turning millions of people into robots, do you find that fun? Do you realize how many kids relate to that fish? Swimming upstream in class, never finding their gifts, thinking they are stupid, believing they are useless? Well, the time has come, no more excuses. I call school to the stand and accuse him of killing creativity, individuality, and being intellectually abusive. He's an ancient institution that has outlived his usage. So, Your Honor, this concludes my opening statement, and if I may present the evidence of my case, I will prove it.
Proceed.
Exhibit A. Here's a modern day phone. Recognize it? Here's a phone from 150 years ago. Big difference, right? Stay with me. Here's a car from today. And here's a car from 150 years ago. Big difference, right? Well, get this. Here's a classroom of today. And here's a class we used 150 years ago. Now ain't that a shame? In literally more than a century, nothing has changed. Yet you claim to prepare students for the future? But with evidence like that, I must ask, do you prepare students for the future or the past? I did a background check on you and let the record show that you were made to train people to work in factories, which explains why you put students in straight rows, nice and neat, tell them sit still, raise your hand if you want to speak, give them a short break to eat, and for 8 hours a day, tell them what to think. Oh, and make them compete to get an A. A letter which determines product quality, hence grade A of meat. I get it. Back then, times were different. We all have a past. I myself am no Gandhi. But today, we don't need to make robot zombies. The world has progressed. And now we need people who think creatively, innovatively, critically, independently, with the ability to connect. See, every scientist will tell you that no two brains are the same, and every parent with 2 or more children will confirm that claim. So please explain why you treat students like cookie cutter frames or snapback hats, giving them this one-size-fits-all crap.
Watch your language.
Sorry, Your Honor, but if a doctor prescribed the exact same medicine to all of his patients, the results will be tragic. So many people will get sick, yet when it comes to school, this is exactly what happens. This educational malpractice, where one teacher stands in front of 20 kids, each one having different strengths, different needs, different gifts, different dreams, and you teach the same thing the same way? That's horrific. Ladies and gentlemen, the defendant should not be acquitted. This may be one of the worst criminal offenses ever to be committed. And let's mention the way you treat your employees.
Objection. Overruled. I want to hear this.
It's a shame. I mean, teachers have the most important job on the planet, yet they're underpaid? No wonder so many students are short-changed. Let's be honest. Teachers should earn just as much as doctors, because a doctor can do heart surgery and save the life of a kid. But a great teacher can reach the heart of that kid and allow him to truly live. See, teachers are heroes that often get blamed, but they're not the problem. They work in a system without many options or rights. Curriculums are created by policymakers, most of which have never taught a day in their life. Just obsessed with standardized tests. They think bubbling in a multiple choice question will determine success. That's outlandish. In fact, these tests are too crude to be used and should be abandoned, but don't take my word for it. Take Frederick J. Kelly, the man who invented standardized testing, who said, and I quote, "These tests are too crude to be used and should be abandoned." Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, if we continue down this road, the results will be lethal. I don't have much faith in school, but I do have faith in people. And if we can customize healthcare, cars, and Facebook pages, then it is our duty to do the same for education, to upgrade it, change it, do away with school spirit, because that's useless unless we're working to bring the spirit out of each and every student. That should be our task. No more Common Core. Instead, let's reach the core of every heart in every class. Sure, math is important, but no more than art or dance. Let's give every gift an equal chance. I know this sounds like a dream, but countries like Finland are doing impressive things. They have shorter school days. Teachers make a decent wage. Homework is non-existent, and they focus on collaboration instead of competition. But here's the kicker, boys and girls. Their educational system outperforms every other country in the world. Other places like Singapore are succeeding rapidly. Schools like Montessori, programs like Khan Academy, there is no single solution. But let's get moving, because while students may be 20% of our population, they are 100% of our future. So let's attend to their dreams, and there's no telling what we can achieve. This is a world in which I believe, a world where fish are no longer forced to climb trees. I'll rest my case.
That video was by a brother named Prince E. It is seen 7.2 or 7.4 million times on YouTube. And when I saw that, it really did crystallize exactly the fundamental problem that we're seeing with education today in this country. That we literally are doing the exact same thing that we were doing 150 years ago, which makes no sense because no other industry is doing the exact same thing they did 150 years ago. Even if you are a farmer, you are not farming today the way they did 150 years ago. The reason we are here, the reason I started this particular initiative is because 2 years ago, I was in Selma for the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. And a state official came up to me and he said, we're about to pass this charter law in Alabama, and a lot of black folks here in the Black Belt are scared to death. And I said, well, why are they scared? They should be rejoicing. And he said, I know you support school choice, and so I would love if you come back to talk to us about it, to explain why it matters. And so I then saw the law passed, and then what ended up happening was the people who actually worked hard to get the law passed left. ed reformers left the state. Now, that made no sense to me because part of the problem, well, one of the reasons we have what I call bad charter schools is because they were constructed initially bad. How many folks have actually had a house built from the ground up? You know that if you have a bad foundation, it does not matter how great the house looks, that house is going to crumble because the foundation is messed up. And that was the same issue for me when it came to a lot of the charter schools out there. Let's just be clear. Let's establish a base level. There are great charter schools. There are good charter schools. There are bad charter schools. There are great traditional schools. There are good traditional schools. There are bad traditional schools. I'm not here for the bad. I only want what's great because I see what is happening with our kids, and we are the ones being most impacted. 2 years ago was the first time in American history a majority of the children in our public schools were black and brown. That number is not going to reverse. America is becoming a more majority-minority country. By 2044, no one group will be a majority in America, which means that we need to be in position to be able to take advantage of our numerical numbers. And if you look at our numerical numbers when it comes to education, they are horrible, which says that we are not going to be in position to take advantage of that. And so this conversation, I'm not asking the question, is school choice the black choice? I'm saying that's the answer. I'm not asking the question, that's the answer. So the point of our conversation today is to have a discussion because there are folks in the state who still oppose it. And the point is very simple. The law is the law. It's there. Other folks about to take advantage of it. Why shouldn't we take advantage of it as well? We also are live streaming this event across multiple platforms, Facebook, YouTube, and Periscope as well. So y'all can turn around the camera and wave if y'all want to. Wave out to all the folks, us being here in Montgomery. I want to go ahead and get started. I want to lay out in terms of our founders, our panelists here. We have a great discussion here. Anthony Brock is the founder of Valiant Cross Academy. Anthony, how you doing? Great. All right then. Zach Buckner, former teacher, Robert E. Lee High School. Lord, let's change that school's name. Because I know some white folks in America don't want to go to Osama bin Laden High School. I'm just saying. Crystal Allen, founder of K. Allen Consulting, former charter school principal. And also Greg Griffin, Jr., attorney as well. And we've got a couple other panelists who may very well be on their way. Dr. Ella Bell, she was with us last night in Selma, and so she said she was going to be coming with us here in Montgomery as well. Let me sort of throw this out right now to folks here in Montgomery, just getting your thoughts. You've heard people in this city adamant as to why they are opposing charter schools, state officials. Yet, correct me if I'm wrong, half of this district schools have been taken over by the state. Correct? So can somebody explain to me, just from your perspective, whether you agree or disagree, how in the world can people be opposing something when the existing schools are so bad that half of them have been taken over by the state? Anybody can jump in. Don't be shy. Any of y'all can jump in. Crystal, go ahead. Go ahead. Anthony, go ahead.
Crystal,
no, go ahead. Go ahead. Yes, you had a mic first.
To that point, I can't really answer and say why everyone is so.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I can't say why everyone's so upset about the charter school movement or the school choice movement because it's 2017 and we're in Montgomery, Alabama, which I believe. I know you went to Selma and I know you went to Birmingham, but I do believe that Montgomery, Alabama, is the most historic city in the world. Don't you agree? Thank you. So we got Dexter Avenue. It's so much history that's happened in Montgomery. So my point is we should not be having this problem, and we really shouldn't be having this conversation in Montgomery, Alabama in the year 2017. We should not be failing our students. We should be providing them with the highest quality of education. And I believe, I was so happy when I found out you were coming because I just think we need enough people around the table to get upset about the problem and start back competing, which the charter school movement and the school choice movement does. It starts and it breeds competition. And I think competition is always healthy, like you said earlier.
Crystal, last night you talked about this in Selma, growing up in this region. Share with, I want to fast forward what we did last night, but share with the folks the experience of when you left the school you were at, where you had a 4.0, and then you went to another school, and let's just say you experienced shock and awe.
So I am a native of Selma, Alabama, and actually a very rural section of Selma called Sardis. And I attended a local high school in Selma and had always received A's, elementary school, middle school, high school. I left my high school and went to the Alabama School of Mathematics and Science in Mobile, Alabama, and the rigor of that institution changed my life in so many different ways. And yet it was the first time in my life that I had ever received C's and D's, because where I was, I, wrote, in my opinion, quite perfectly. But as a 10th grader, I was producing 1 to 2 page papers that were actually book reports, where I was copying stuff from books, where I was answering basic questions such as, who are the main characters, what's the plot, in high school. Basic questions that did not encompass rigor. When I went to that school in Mobile, it was the first time in which I had ever heard what APA or MLA were, which are formats of collegiate writing. So by the time I'm going into 11th grade, they're asking me to produce 8 to 10 page papers as a junior in Mobile at that school using APA format. So the experience I had was working so hard to keep up, and I finished and I did very well. I went to Notre Dame for college. Notre Dame was very easy for me because of my experience down there for those 2 years, but I could never forget it, even as a principal in a charter context, understanding the difference of what my students were learning and doing, even at the age of 5, versus peers. So seeing 3rd graders produce 3-page papers with full coherent sentences, with a thesis statement in the 3rd grade, where I could come home to my own little brother who was in the same grade, who could produce barely 1 page, right? Both students are capable. Both students have potential. So the question would be, how is it possible that 2 students are reaching totally different outcomes when they're starting at the same place? And a lot of it is the lack of rigor.
And what's interesting about that is, what that says is that had you not gone to that school in Mobile, you would have gone to college and you thought, oh, I'm good. The potential was there. You could have flunked out of Notre Dame your first year.
I would not have probably been admitted to Notre Dame. When I left my high school, I had taken the ACT my 9th grade year. By the time I graduated from the math and science school, my ACT score rose by 8 points. The national average for rising ACT scores are usually 2 points you move up by, max of 3, not 8. So for me, it really showed my family and I that it wasn't necessarily the lack of my potential. It was about what was being put in front of me and to what extent I was being held to higher expectations. And to this day, all of my classmates that I went to school with and I grew up with, I love them to death. I don't believe in this idea that I'm better because I went to Notre Dame and I'm getting a PhD right now at Columbia in New York. I believe we started from the same place. Why is my narrative so different? And the educational narrative is the difference. It's the opportunities we've been afforded.
You taught in high school. How many years?
24 years.
What subject?
I taught ROTC.
And when we begin to talk about proficiency standards, we begin to talk about what the numbers look like. The last week has been stunning when I'm sitting here talking to people and I'm hearing 0%, 1%, 2%, 3% proficiency in math, in writing, in language. That means 100%, 99, 98, 97% of our children are not proficient. That is a recipe for disaster for them for the rest of their lives. And I've heard people literally defend massive failure as if that's our only alternative.
Let me try to defend those educators and the politicians you say that are against these other, charter schools and vouchers and all of that. I believe that what they are against is doing away with a system that educates all the children. In other words, these charter schools, these vouchers, they can get some of the students, 10%, 20%, and take all of the education money. But we got 80%, 90% of the students still stuck in that system with no money and no way out.
So let me break down that. Hold on. Let's unpack. I'm gonna let you finish, but hold on. I'm gonna give you all the time. We got time, but I need to unpack what you just said. So first you said we have systems that are educating all of the children. I just said 1, 2, and 3% proficiency. So what that is telling me is, yes, they might be sitting in the classroom, but they're not educating the students. Right. So how can we say that this system is actually educating our kids when numbers don't lie? They're not. They're surfacing our kids. They're not educating our kids.
But what I said, we wanted a system we want. That's what we want. If we use choice, and I'm not against choice, I believe that all of us should have these choices. But what do we do with the other kids? If we give choices to some, what are we going to do with the other kids?
Okay, but
they're not being educated now.
But what are we doing? Okay, but what are we doing with the kids right now who we're not educating?
I believe that we all should push for public education and do all we can.
But charters are public.
And support the students.
But charters are public. So that's public. Charters are public schools. Right. Traditional schools are public.
Right.
And so I'm just trying to understand, we know what is failing. Right. Why are we saying let's keep with what's failing as opposed to try something that might work?
Right. I'm not saying keep what we're doing now.
So what do we do with it?
We need to change the system. We need to get more people supporting public education.
But the people here support public.
A lot of people have deserted public education.
Okay, first of all, you said that we're going to remove the money from traditional schools and leave them with no money on the charters. That's just not true. That simply is not true.
Well, I'm saying that's the belief.
But that's the lie.
Okay.
No, that's the lie. So how many students are there in Montgomery Public School System? Who knows the number?
30,000.
About 30,000. Okay? That means that there is an allocation assigned to each of the 30,000 students in Montgomery Public Schools. So let's say 5,000 of Montgomery Public School students, if charters are created, 5,000 of them go to those charter schools. That means that there are 25,000 students still attending Montgomery Public Schools, which means that what's the state average? 9,000 per pupil. What is it? 6, 7, 8. What is it in Alabama? 6,000. Okay, that means that so if it's 6,000, say it again. Let's just say it's 6,000. All right, I'm just going ahead and pull my calendar out. See, and understand, folks, what's important to me. We need to operate from the same set of facts. Part of the problem is that in these conversations, we have what Kellyanne Conway likes to live by, alternative facts. I don't do alternative facts. So that means that if 25,000 students in Montgomery, and the allocation is 6,000 each, that means that the Montgomery public school system will be getting $150 million to educate those 25,000. That means that if 5,000 kids are enrolled in various charter schools at 6,000 each, that means that the charter schools are going to get 30 million, which means that if you can't say all the money is now going to the charters, because if charters are serving 5,000 and getting 30 million, and the public schools are serving 25,000 and getting 150 million, sounds to me like there's 150 million left to educate the existing kids. And I'm just trying to figure out why, if the existing school system is not educating our kids, why would we not support the creation of other schools to give them a shot?
Well, what I'm saying, let's make them all chartered.
No. Hold up. No, see. No. Hold up.
I pick 5,000 out to give them a good education.
Now, here's the deal.
If they're better, then let's do it.
No. And see, that's right there. You are alpha brother like myself, but that's a cute debate trick that I can destroy very easily. The mistake that we make is when we say, well, if they're better, just make them all charters. Here's the reality. Here's the reality that we exist right here. And I'm going to take questions. Don't worry about it, but just hold on. And so I want you to speak to this, and Crystal, you can speak to this. Education is a pie. It's a pie. There are kids who go to traditional schools. There are kids who go to public charters. There are kids who go to magnet schools. There are kids who go to homeschool. There are kids who go online school. There are kids who go to school via vouchers. There are multiple methods of educating our children. We are stuck on a delivery system, believing it's the delivery system. A system versus the system. I have talked to people in Alabama who oppose the Opportunity Scholarship Fund. That's the correct name, right? So, Leslie, they're what? How many kids are taking advantage of those scholarships?
About 4,000, and about 21,000 are on the waiting list.
Oh, so there are 4,000 children taking advantage of the Opportunity Scholarship. And what's the percentage of those children who are minority? Okay, so 80% of the kids 80% of the 4,000 on the Opportunity Scholarship are African American, and I've heard black people not like the Opportunity Scholarship Fund. So what we are essentially saying to black people is, we don't want you to take advantage of the Opportunity Scholarship Fund. We don't want you taking advantage of charter schools. We want you to stick with exactly what you've had all these years. I'm just trying to understand the logic of that, knowing full well that if we went to a restaurant in Montgomery that served food that gave us food poisoning, it's a good bet I'm not going back next week. Go right ahead. Share your thoughts.
Okay, I went to public magnet school here in Montgomery and also went to private school.
Hold on. Oh. There are magnet schools in Montgomery?
Yes.
Did you have to apply to get in?
Yeah, it was like a lottery system, I believe.
Was it a lottery, or did you have to apply to get in?
Yes.
You had to apply to get in?
Yes.
Yeah. I was one of the first classes at
No.
So
I'm gonna let you finish. So you've had magnet schools, which is also a choice, which you have to apply to get in. So do people in Montgomery oppose the magnet schools?
Yes.
I hear all these no's. So don't you find it interesting that if the argument is, well, some kids get in and some can't, but you have magnet schools where some get in and some can't, but folks are fine with the magnet schools, but we're fighting the charter schools. And the reason I know that is I went to Magnet High School and the Magnet Elementary School. So I find it interesting, to your point, how we are mad at charters, but like magnets, when magnets is choice. Go ahead, bro.
Okay. I lost my train of thought.
No, you talk about, so your experience going to magnet schools, and what was that like as opposed to going to a traditional school?
Well, I never went to a traditional school. I went to magnet schools, and then I graduated from St. Jude Educational Institute, private school here in Montgomery. And
why did your parents send you there?
For me, the environment was better. Like, I don't know, I always did better in smaller environments, with more like attention. Like in magnet schools, it kind of seemed as though it was more, it wasn't as nurturing as the private school.
So let me unpack that. So you went to a private school that gave you a different learning environment, a different learning experience, a smaller classroom experience, because your parents said, I want you to have a shot, and if we can afford to do this, we're gonna do it.
Yes, those are resources.
So if, let's say there's somebody sitting in here, and they said, I want to start a charter school, and I get to determine the curriculum, I get to determine the class size, I get to determine the nurturing environment, I get to determine the teacher development, I get to determine who gets the contracts. Does that sound like something that you think other folks in Montgomery would like?
I understand that part. I actually taught at a charter school in Pittsburgh when I was in law school for like a year. And
what kind of charter school was it? Was it a lottery? Was it a selection? And was it a career-based school? Was it elementary, middle, or high school?
It was high school, and I believe it was a career-based school.
Okay.
I'm not sure what the process as far as was application or lottery, but it was interesting to me that it didn't really seem like there was like much structure there though. Like I know you said they're bad charter schools and they're good charter schools. And
so this was one of the bad ones?
I'm not necessarily saying it was a bad charter school, but
you ain't saying it was great.
I'm not saying it was great.
Which means it wasn't good. Which means it was bad. Doc, just go ahead and say it what it is. I mean, we in church, God already knows what kind of school it was. So ain't no sense in sitting here dancing around it. I mean, you might still have some friends who were there, but you no longer work there. Do you still live in Pittsburgh?
No, I live here in Montgomery.
So why are you concerned about what they think? Just go ahead and tell us what kind of school it was.
I mean, it was a decent school. The structure for me, like thinking back like to when I was in school, the structure would not have worked for me.
So the structure would not have worked for you. So would you like to have the opportunity that if you decided to say, I want to launch my own charter school, knowing that experience, and I want to structure it in a different way, would you like the opportunity to be able to do that?
Yes. My question is, though, I know you said that charter schools are public. In one of my research papers, all of them weren't public. Some were like semi-private. Yeah, like contract-based. And I didn't know at what point, what keeps them from all the charter schools eventually saying, okay, we want to go private now?
Okay, so let me answer that question. First of all, the charter schools are public. The reason they are public, the way that law works in Alabama is, first of all, out of the 138 school districts in this state, only 4 school districts have agreed to be a charter authorizer, just 4. So you have to then go to your local school district for them to authorize the charter school. If they say no, you can go to the state commission and they will authorize that charter school. That charter school has 3 years to make the grade. If the charter school does not make the grade in 3 years, the charter school can get closed down by the state. So they have to be held accountable to state standards, state financial standards, state education standards, state proficiency standards. That's public. If it was a private school, they don't need the approval of the Montgomery school system or the state commission. You can simply open your private school. That is the difference. And so when you say, well, they can't just flip it, you can't just flip from public to private.
Is that just in Alabama or is that everywhere?
Everywhere. You just can't just flip. Crystal, you consult on this. You run a school. And again, that's one of the things that people don't quite understand about charter schools. A person running it can't just, and when I say a person running it, folks, the way this works is if you get approved to run a charter school in Montgomery, you and your board run the school, not the local school district. You are what they call a CMO, a charter management operator. Okay? That's what you are. You and your board. So you determine the curriculum. If you believe that the kids need more Black history, you get to put it in the curriculum. You don't have to ask anybody's approval to do so. If you believe, you can go through this whole deal. Chris, I want you to talk about that because last night when you discussed this, people were blown away when we talked about how you decided teacher salaries and decided all the aspects. So walk folks through that, your experience, so they understand as somebody a black woman who's run one, what that means.
So the tenets, the two major tenets of charter schools, aside from the fact to this point that they're public and they're independently operated, though, is the tenet of autonomy and also accountability. So the autonomy that principals have and teachers have within charter schools are totally different than traditional public schools. Within a traditional public school district, there are many more layers of red tape, stipulations, procedures that you have to go through to get means of approval for really anything. Within a charter school, the decision-making power rests at the seat of the principal and the teachers. And so for me, what that meant was, you know, I have a strong orientation towards social justice. Growing up in Selma, I have a deep appreciation for the civil rights movement. My students heavily engaged in experiential learning. I got to decide how I leverage my budget instead of the budget being decided for me. So what that looked like was fully funding hotel, buses, food, whole nine, my students to make regular trips to Selma, Montgomery, Birmingham, to meet Representative John Lewis, etc. When the Mike Brown incident happened, I took a portion of our budget and afforded the opportunity for my 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders to go to Ferguson, Missouri.
So you didn't have to ask any school district.
No.
You didn't have to ask the state. You didn't have to ask anybody. If the parents signed the waiver said my child can go, that's what happened.
Yeah, that's what happened. And part of it is that, you know, you are operating within your philosophies and your deep convictions of how our school should operate. And the beauty of it is that there are lots of different paths to get to an outcome. The path does not have to look the same for everyone. So I'll give you some examples of different charter models. There are some charter models that operate with a max of 8 students per classroom. Literally, one teacher for every 8 kids. They do not exceed that max because at that charter school, they believe in individualized instruction. That is their motto. They get great results, right? There's another model that has 2 to 3 teachers per classroom for a cap of 24 students. So what does that mean? 2 to 3 teachers actively engaged, pulling out groups of students. Some students are on laptops doing, technology, lessons with a representative from Essence or Ebony because like they value that. Another charter model, and I can even tell you, implements a lot of social emotional supports because of what the kids need. I even had within my budget a school psychologist and a school social worker who were full-time staff, as well as an occupational therapist, a full-time school nurse, the whole nine, because my students dealt with a lot of trauma. So for me, you need to be well-fed, you need to be, nurtured. When you see trauma occur, when you've seen your uncle be shot in front of you, when you were in 1st grade and you know what a gunshot sounds like, yes, you have recess, yes, you have math, yes, you have science, but you also have cushioned moments within your week where you get free social work and counseling services, and our parents appreciated that because as a parent, I don't have to come out of my pocket to say, can my baby see a therapist? No, they can't because I can't afford it. Nope, my baby's school provides that for them automatically. So it's being open to the fact that schools can look 100 million different ways, but the autonomy rests at the seat of the principal and the teachers. Last note about teacher salaries, we decided that textbook and hardcore curriculum weren't really something we wanted to invest in. We invested in online books, ebooks. We took that money and cushioned it to increase teacher salaries. So hold
on. Let me start right there. So versus a central office telling you you have to order these textbooks or you have to order this software from these companies that we've already picked. Right. You said, no, I've done my own research, and these are the best options for my students at my school.
Yeah, and the teachers decide. I mean, it's the matter of me also taking a back seat to say, yes, I'm the principal, yes, I'm the school leader, but you have been teaching 4th grade for 8 years. What have you seen that's working, that's not working? What do you guys as a 4th grade team want to do to attack and address these standards differently? So they come to me and they say, we need every 4th grader with a laptop this year. We rearrange the allocation for 4th grade and every 4th grader has a laptop that next school year. So it's about thinking, you know, a bit out of the box. But to the point around teacher salaries, we had folks who were then 22 years old, graduated from college, their first year teaching, they're making $43,500 because we believe to attract great talent, we wanted to also compensate them. So they never feel like, I don't want to teach because teaching doesn't pay that much. Nope, it's going to pay. It's going to pay.
What city was this?
You said what?
What city was this?
New Orleans.
New Orleans. What's the starting salary for a teacher in Montgomery? Anybody know? $38,600. So that means, so in New Orleans, you were paying $5,000 plus more than about 11% more than what an average teacher starts here. And again, the point in the video we saw, we keep saying, oh, we should pay teachers more, but folks don't necessarily do it. Your deal was, I control the budget. I determine where my allocation goes. I'm going to make sure my teachers get paid.
Yes, and teacher development was very important. So, for example, I don't really believe in this model, and I never appreciated as a teacher that when professional development
So one second. So you taught in traditional schools?
I taught in both schools.
Go ahead.
Yep. I never appreciated when I taught in a traditional setting that the only people who could go to professional development, especially out of state, was the principal, was someone from the Citrus office, etc. So I took my experiences and said, I never want my teachers to feel like their learning is not top priority for me, which meant that every single year, teachers had the autonomy. We would fly a whole 5th grade team up to New York for a professional development, fully expense paid on the school, because we wanted to invest in them. And while they're gone, we have substitutes covering their classes, but it's showing them that we're investing in your learning. We also cut our school days on Wednesdays to be half a day. So instead of the idea that in-service or training happens every 9 weeks, teachers get weekly professional development on things they need to work on, how they need to grow. And my responsibility as a school leader was to regularly observe them 3 days out of the week. I would bring in a camera, our leadership team would. We would video record them. We would have check-ins so they can watch themselves, and we practice, just like basketball players. How do you do this better? But they knew every Wednesday from 2 to 4, they're in professional development. So people are not telling them what you're doing wrong and telling you to get it together. They're saying, this is what needs to happen, but let me show you and support the way to help you get there.
So Zach, I got to ask you, was that your experience in the traditional school?
And no, you had certain some autonomy, but not.
As a teacher, would you have liked to have had that level of autonomy?
Certainly.
As a teacher, would you have liked to have had a principal who determined salaries and actually reward, let's be honest, the really great teachers versus just having on an equal, just sort of the same?
That's a perfect society.
Would you have liked to have had the opportunity where if you decided, say, I want to take my students to this place as a learning experience, I don't need to go through a central office to do that?
Yes, if it worked for every school.
Right, but here's the deal, though.
Every school did it.
Yeah, but the point.
Including special ed students.
Gotcha, but let's also be clear, and I'm gonna deal with your special ed in a moment. When I play a video, you're gonna see a black-run charter school in Memphis where they also service special ed kids. See, Zach, I understand every single talking point you throwing out gonna get swatted away real easy because, again, they're talking points. The bottom line is this here. You got magnet schools right now, every kid can't go to it. So here's what I don't understand. If you've got, what's the number again, 30,000 kids here? 30,000. If you got 30,000 kids here and the state is already taking over half of your schools, what if a black-run charter came in and said, we want to develop charter schools for half of the students? Would you rather have that or the state take the schools over?
Anyone that would best for the students.
So
if the state is better for the students, that's good. If the charters are better for the students are the main course.
So if the students are the main thing and it's what's best for the students, then why oppose it? Why not say give it a shot? Because clearly what we have now is not doing the trick.
I agree, but we don't want to leave anybody behind.
Go ahead. Go, Krista, go.
Yeah, I would love to speak to that piece. So, I mean, all schools are public. Charter schools are public and traditional schools. But what I want to really think about a city like Chicago or like D.C., and you referenced this last night, that about 55% of the students in D.C. are in traditional schools. About 45% of them are in public charter schools. They're making results all across the board, but the premise is not to make a great charter example, it's to make all schools good. But the reality is, if we're not open to exposing ourselves to different ways of teaching and learning and supporting teachers, etc., we're never gonna innovate, because for the last 40 plus years, we've competed as a state for being number 46, 47, 48, 49, and number 50 in education. And those numbers don't lie. So if we're trying to, try to compete and say, well, last year we were number 47 in the country. Last year we were number 45. It's still low. It's still in the bottom tier. And we have to be open to the fact that if we have different models coming to our cities, what's going to happen is that it actually ups the game of traditional schools by giving them other examples to see. You can't be what you can't see. So if I want to think outside the box, I can't really do it if I've also not seen all the 50 million ways of what it looks like. And in a city like DC or Chicago, charter school teachers go observe traditional schools go observe charter. They learn from one another. But the point is that they coexist. They don't have to be vying for one another because they're all focusing on best practices. But the system as it currently stands is not working. Our black belt average on the ACT is a 12. I'm gonna say that again. The average is a 12 across black belt counties. The national average on the ACT is a 21. And to be admissible to most universities, you need at least an 18. We're at 12, y'all, a 12. But as a state, we have 87.5% of our graduates graduating high school. And we tout that number around, but 87.5% of high schoolers who are getting a 12 on the ACT have no opportunities and no options when they graduate. So we have to think our numbers, we can inflate our numbers, we can make our numbers look all kinds of good, but when our kids go to Google a college or university and they can't read an application, write a 2-page essay defending why they want to get admitted to that university, and they're making 12s on the ACT, we need to look at ourselves and say, how can we do this differently? Because our kids are not ready to compete. And when they move out of state and they go even to Atlanta, to DC, Chicago, Massachusetts, they're like so behind. And any of you who moved to different places, you've seen the difference and you're like, whoa, how in the world are kids in this state at this level and my baby's here? But when I had my baby in Selma or in Lowndes County or in wherever, my baby made straight A's. So how's my baby now in Texas making D's?
I was going to jump in and say, so with me, my story is a little different. I'm actually a public school product here in Montgomery. I'm graduated from the near high school, so I've seen both sides. I've been in public education actually since 1999 in a county that's close by, Ottawa County. So I served as a principal, an assistant principal, worked at central office. So I had a variety of experience in mentoring. However, I hit a ceiling in my career where I did not have those opportunities to go out and expose my staff and my scholars and my students to things that I wanted to expose them to, because every time I had an idea, all these creative thoughts were going on in my head, but I could not do them and I couldn't push them forward. And so what happens, my brother and I had the opportunity to start traveling, and we visited actually with Miss Cersei and Miss Andrews, we visited a lot of charter schools.
Who's your brother? Where is he?
Frederick, yes.
Man, give your brother a shout out. Tell him to stand up.
That's Fred. I'm not thinking about Fred right now.
All right.
So,
well, Fred would appreciate a shout out. Go ahead. Go ahead.
And so when I had an opportunity to visit the KIPP schools, that's when I was thinking, you know what, these ideas I have can actually come to fruition. And
now you do know that the KIPP educational model was created by a black woman, Harriet Ball.
Yes, sir.
A black woman. The co-founder of KIPP heard this big commotion across the hall. They were in traditional public school. I'm gonna let you finish, but the audience needs to know this. So how many people heard about the KIPP schools? They got about 200 across the country. Y'all probably don't know that he heard this big noise and he said, what is going on? He thought, you know, there was trouble. He walks across the hall, and as this classroom of mostly black kids, they are laughing, they are singing, they are shouting, they're raising their hand because she was using music, rap, and rhythm to teach them reading, writing, math. And he stood there, and basically a light bulb went off. And what he witnessed, and then talking to her, that formed the basis of the education model for all KIPP schools to this day. Harriet died a few years ago of a heart attack, but her creativity in the classroom still lives on because KIPP is using that model. Go ahead.
So to that point, when I started visiting schools like KIPP and Nashville Prep up in Tennessee, and you see all the innovative things they're doing, you have to be open-minded as an educator, as a leader, to adopt some of these practices if they're working. So the longer school day, more time on task. We go to school at 5 o'clock every day, and then on Friday we get out at 12, just like she said, and it's staff development time. But you have to build those times in. You have to plan professional development where you can put your entire staff on a van, on a bus, on a van for us. We're not plane ready yet, but we do get on a bus and we go visit schools, and you can walk through and you can learn these cultures. You can't think you have it all figured out. And the way sometimes what happens is, and I don't like to, I never down a public school because I'm a public school product. Dad's a public school educator for years. I was too. But we do have to look at some of the best practices at some of these other schools. And I think everything starts and ends with leadership. So I believe, I also believe if you take a strong leader and put him in a public school, I think he can work wonders. However, you have to have a staff who's bought in. And so I'm a private school.
No. I don't want you to race just past that. I want to stop right there. You said you also have to have a staff that is bought in. Now let me be real clear, folks, and this is where it might get uncomfortable with some people. The one advantage of a charter school is that if you got some folks on your staff who don't want to buy in, they ain't gonna be there next year. Now, if you're in traditional schools, you got some folks who not buying in, who can't be moved. Now, there are people who get mad. There are some union people who get upset by that. But the reality is this: on your job right now, if there is somebody who isn't buying in to the new CEO, do you say, okay, you good, you can stay right there? It's a good bet they either gonna move on their own or you gonna move them to their own divine good. That's called getting fired. The reason that's important is because, and I'm telling you, this is one of the battles folks have. I've heard the critics say it's too much turnover, or they don't have job protection. But you said it. You have to buy into what the leadership is saying, what we need at this school. And if not, you can't just be a disruptive force in that operation. Go ahead.
So the other part is that I was going to say is like with Dr. Perry, like with Steve Perry's school and Jeffrey Canada's school, they always say that, you know, the people from the area right around the school, they never come to their school. And of course, Dr. Steve Perry's schools visited from people from all over, or Urban Prep up in Chicago. People visit these schools from all over, but at home they don't. I think one of the solutions here is that we have the conversation. We have those crucial conversations across the board. If it's a public school, if it's a private school, if it's a Catholic school, I think those administrators need to talk and get together and talk about best practices. And you can't have, because our school is very small. However,
how many students?
We're going to eventually have 210. We're up to 90 right now. We're adding a grade a year, and that's a charter school model. Start with 1 grade, so you can get it right.
What grade is that?
We have 6th, 7th, and 8th, and that was the area we wanted to jump in, so we thought we could have the most immediate impact in. But you just have to be open-minded, and we have to somehow form these crucial conversations about what works. I do believe a lot of the things that we do and a lot of things that charter schools do can be implemented. I also was a principal at an alternative school, and the way I start my morning out, even at our school, we did it. I'm a faith-based school now, so we couldn't pray, but we still would get together and do our mottos and our mantras, and those are things that are not new across America, but they're new in this area. But you know, everybody else is doing them. But we just got to jump on board and be open-minded.
And what's amazing to me, again, when you begin to talk about, when you begin to deal with people who make stuff up. So I got somebody on Facebook. KIPP is a Trojan horse to the African American communities across America. Do the research. Then you got somebody, Cynthia Nelson. Charter schools are owned by a company. Company equals private. Y'all, again, lie. 70% of charter schools in America are single operators. Most of them are churches. Let me say that again. What has happened is folks say, oh, you got these rich white billionaires who want to take all this money out of public charter schools. Nearly 70% of all charters are single charter management companies. They are largely churches and nonprofits. I can go down the line. Yes, you have a KIPP with 200, but you got Friendship Public Charter School in Washington, D.C., Black run. What I'm trying to get us to get to the point is to stop whining and complaining about non-black folks running charter school companies. I'm trying to get black folks to do it. I want to see a black run charter company with 200 schools across the country. See, at some point, we have got to get out of this, well, you know, you got white folks trying to take it over. We got to be in takeover mode. The law is sitting right there. In Birmingham, Pastor Thomas Beavers wanted to create a K-8 charter school. Applied to the Birmingham city, he got denied. Went to the state, got accepted. Birmingham School Board suing the state, saying they didn't have the authority to pick the school, even though the law says they actually did. His school couldn't open in 2017, and so now he's targeting 2018. So those children who wanted to go can't go. You talked about the waiting list. This is the best indicator of the problems that we have. Eva Moskowitz schools in New York City, success charters. Now folks upset, oh my God, they too tough, they too hard on students, they drill down. Numbers don't lie. They outperform the other schools, they outperform the traditional schools, and guess what their waiting list is? 20,000. Now let me ask y'all a question. How many of y'all been to a hot club? And when they got a line outside, are you gonna stand in that line? Why? Because you ain't trying to go to the sorry club where there's no line. Am I lying? Y'all can sit here in front all y'all want to. Okay, since y'all church people, y'all don't want to go to a club, even though I know y'all lying about that too. Okay, how about this here? What's the restaurant here in Montgomery that always has a line? Say it again. Dreamland, what do you say? Shabby?
Mrs. B's.
Mrs. B's. Always got a line. How many of y'all wait in line for their food? All of you. Do you really want to go to a place where there's no line? Which means don't nobody really like their food. So explain this to me. If there's a food place with a long line, and you will wait for that, and you got schools with waiting lists of 4 and 5 and 20,000, sounds to me like folks are saying, I'm trying to get into that school because they are doing something in that school that's amazing, and I need my kid to be in that school. Why don't we then say, fine, we need 30 more of those schools, so then you don't have a waiting list of 20,000, as opposed to say, no, I know y'all want to go into that school, but y'all going over there, and you like, well, but they got bad food. But no, go over there because I'm telling you, go over there. That to me is insanity. There you go. So you got waiting lists for magnet schools now, as opposed to somebody saying, create more magnets.
Right.
Create. I mean, at the end of the day. So let me give you these numbers so you can understand this here. We did the poll at TV One 2 years ago, and we did an hour documentary on the New Orleans charter system. We polled, and now let me set this up. Now, a lot of black people who don't like charters start going, well, you ain't called me. Everybody don't get called. Then they question who did it. The polling company we use with Brilliant Corners Research, run by Cornell Belcher, who was one of President Barack Obama's top pollsters. Now, I know black people consider Obama right below Jesus Christ. No, actually, he right below MLK, who's below Jesus Christ. So we went and got Obama's top pollster. So if y'all want to hate on the pollster, y'all going to be hating on Obama, so you almost hating on Jesus. So no, y'all ain't going to do that. This is what he did. We did not talk to white parents, Hispanic parents, Asian parents. We only polled black parents. 72% of black parents supported charter schools. 74% of black parents said they would like to enroll their kids in a charter school. 79% of black parents said they supported vouchers. Your Opportunity Scholarship Fund is essentially a voucher. So I find it interesting that 70+% of black parents support charters and vouchers, yet black civil rights organizations, black politicians, unions and others are adamantly opposed to the very thing that black parents say they want. Why do black parents support it in those numbers? Because those black parents know their kids are going to bad schools, and what those black parents say, I want what's best for my child, and I can't wait on your 5 and 10 and 20-year plan, because by the time your plan is implemented, my child has already gone through schools. Y'all, those are undeniable facts. So I'm gonna ask this question here, we go around, and you mentioned, I want to start with you. You mentioned earlier, if somebody sitting in this room wants to begin this process of launching a charter school in Montgomery, what should they focus on to ensure is on the path of success?
Options. I mean, I don't think it should be just like one type of school. I mean, like it should have more options of, whether the environment's a more nurturing environment, whether it's a career-based environment, like how they used to have home economics and things of such in traditional schools.
So you're saying that if you do a charter school, what you're looking for vocational, which will give people a skill set.
Yes.
Okay. That's it?
Yes.
All right. Crystal.
I would say to focus on researching the various models of charter schools to learn all the different options about what they can look like, how they can be structured, how they can be staffed, et cetera. I think what that does is it creates a very strong charter application and a roadmap for how that person's charter could potentially be constructed. The second thing that I would say about that is, in the research, begin to learn the strengths of charters and the gaps, because there are some huge challenges and failures of charter schools as well, like huge. And if we're not honest about those challenges of charter schools, we'll go into a situation replicating them. So we want to strengthen what our model may be based on failures in the past. The other thing I would say is to leverage our history. The history of Montgomery, the history of Selma. We have a history that people flock to this region to be a part of every single year, because they want to relive the stuff that is a part of our history. And I think that if we can create charter schools in the Black Belt region that focus on social justice, How incredible would that be for students to take active courses in what it means to be an activist, what it means to protest, what it means to boycott, what it means to write petitions, what it means to speak at city council meetings. So we create babies and scholars who are social agents of change, who are critical thinkers, who question the world around them, but they not only question it, they know how to approach it and push an agenda even in elementary school when they want to see something be different. So those would be my things. Research what's out there to build strong charter applications, because what is strong can't be easily denied by a board. And the second thing is to leverage our rich history and how we build models so that people even from Finland and Norway will fly to the United States to see what's happening in Montgomery and Selma, Alabama.
What would you, if someone wanted to start a charter school, you taught in school 24 years, what do you want to see them focus on to ensure that school starts at the beginning with a strong foundation?
Well, I'm going to go back to my main thing, the needs of the students. I would think that if I was going to start a charter school, the first thing I would do is find out what are the particular needs of the students and concentrate on those particular needs. If there are separate needs of certain students, just like Brother Brock did when he started his, he surveyed the needs, and the needs 6th through 8th grade with Boaz. That was great. So I would think anyone that would start a charter school would first make that step. I was sitting there thinking, Roland, though, when we was talking about all of those good things that you said that could happen, and they probably would, if we could just do all of those things, change all of those rules, have these smart educators we have here running the system in a public school system. If we could change all the rules you say that they can do, all the freedom that they do, and all of that, and I know it's a challenge to do that, but if we could change all of that in the public school system, wouldn't that be good, or would that be a need for charter schools?
You started with if.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I said if.
Right. If, to me, is a Rudyard Kipling poem that we had to memorize when we pledged. Right. I ain't waiting on if. He just sat there and said he was in a school and had these ideas and wanted to do these things, but couldn't. She was in a school, had these ideas, wanted to do it, couldn't. And so why should we, and there's no disrespect to your 24-year servant, but if there is a brother or a sister who is 25 and 27 and 30, and they are in a school system, and then they are stuck, and they can't move, they're being suffocated, they're being strangled, and over here, we have an option. Why am I, and I'm gonna use, if I'm gonna be stuck over here in Egypt, and this potentially is the promised land, I ain't trying to stay in Egypt. And until Egypt decides to change, I'm going over here to the promised land, this charter school, which is going to allow me that level of flexibility. That's where we are. And to Crystal's point, because I've seen it, if all of a sudden over here these charters are innovating and then they're doing well, it's going to force traditional schools to say, well, we might want to loosen this thing up, because the reality is this: as long as the current traditional system has no incentive to change, they will not change. Go ahead. What do you want to see if somebody here wants to start, a pastor, an educator, an entrepreneur? What do you want to tell them at the beginning what they should focus on?
Right. I think, first of all, is usually the elephant in the room in most schools is you cannot neglect the importance of the culture and the climate of that school. So one thing we do, and a lot of the charter schools do, which we learned, is they bring the young men in a week or two before the school year starts. You train them on the culture, so day one you're ready for instruction. They need to know how to ask a question, how to walk in the hallway, and those kind of things alleviate all that when school starts. You also have to create a culture, like she said, that's culturally relevant. I mean, these are some of my scholars here. These guys are 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and we are going to open a high school.
Stand up. All right.
So
now, is that blue and gold or black and gold?
It's definitely not black and gold.
I don't know why you messed up.
Let me catch that real quick. It's blue and gold. Make no mistakes about it. It's blue and gold.
Oh, he a Kappa?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but he didn't want to be black and gold, but he got close to black and gold. See, don't get that twisted. Gentlemen, y'all go ahead and take a seat. Glad to see y'all here. Thanks a bunch.
So these awesome young men right now, they're reading either The Invisible Man or they're reading Up from Slavery. And so you can expose them to so many things, and so I don't have to go ask anybody, is it okay to read The Invisible Man, even though I know it's a few questionable parts in it, but I know it's going to teach them more about themselves, and we got to have books in the school that look like us. And so it's real important, I would say, when you're creating a school, to make sure you create a school where we're celebrated and not just tolerated. And sometimes the toleration even comes from people that look like us. And so I'm real adamant about labels. I talk to my boys, don't create a school where you allow labels to be on your young men. I always say ADD, ADHD, and all those things. I think he definitely had it. My brother he definitely would have been ADHD. If it was today, he would have ADHD. But we had a father.
Same here. I mean,
but most African American males do, because our mind is racing and it's hard to just sit still and just.
That's called creativity.
That's right. So you got to get them up, and you have to allow them to move. You got to get them out the building. Now our environment is very structured, very disciplined, but you have to also teach.
I'm cool with that. I saw how they stood up.
Yes, sir.
Y'all stand up again. Y'all sit down. Y'all stand up again. Okay, I just want to go ahead and do y'all sit down. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So with the more time on task, research shows, and we go through 5 o'clock, we go through the summer, we go from 9 to 12 throughout the summer, so more time on task. We have an optional Saturday program for those scholars that need it. And I was going to say before I move on, it's real important, going back to staff, that you look for a specific type of staff member. And the ones we look for are the ones who have buy-in. They know that on the weekends we're going to have to be with these young men. They may have to go to church with you. If it's any event that comes up, we have to do it. And we have some young men also, a lot of our young men in this group actually today that qualify for some of the magnet programs. And so I commend the parents like Mr. Waters right here, who are very supportive of the school. And if I have a problem and I call
Mr. Waters?
Stand up, Mr. Waters. Yes, sir.
Stand up.
So
all right.
So we have a great relationship with the parents at our school. So how do we do that? When the parents come pick their young men up, if we have a problem, then we meet them at the car so they know before they go home. So it's just that open line of communication.
That's what I'm saying.
And it's definitely about the adults in the building saying these are our non-negotiables. And we're the adults in the building, you're the children, because if you don't have and my point was talking about culture and climate. If you don't have culture and climate, you can have all the smart boards, MacBooks, the best curriculum, the best PD anywhere. It's no good. Instruction can't go forth if it's a chaotic environment. So that's important.
Would you like to flip your school to a charter to service more students?
We're looking at possibly down the road, maybe in elementary, but I can't, because our school is faith-based. And like all of the money that we get in our school is raised privately, other than the Accountability Act that we take part in with Leslie. But I don't want to switch our middle school because the faith pays, we're standing on the faith base right now.
Mm-hmm.
And, like we don't know provision we don't have provision for, I'm in church so I'll preach too now. So we're in school, I don't have our budget raised for next school year yet. But God just keeps providing, because I do believe if you take care of these young people, then provision's going to always come, and that's how we've been doing it since day one, and it just.
You've been open how long?
This is our 3rd year open, but we actually did a year of planning, so this is almost our 4th year.
I want to do this right now. I believe in best practices, and so one of the things that we did with School Choice is a Black Choice, we utilizing a grant from the Walton Family Foundation, which allowed for us to put all of this on to travel here and to do this. I also told them we also have to tell the black charter story, because part of the problem, again, with this entire ed reform movement is that for many African Americans, they have heard about charters. Unless your kid goes to one or you know someone, most folks have never actually seen or heard African Americans who are running high quality, successful charter schools. And so we have this media initiative called School Choice All-Stars. And there's a reason why I'm calling it that, because I need black folks, adults and children, to understand that we cannot look at a LeBron James or a Kobe Bryant or a Kyrie Irving or Carmelo Anthony or James Harden and say, oh, look at that all-star. We can't look to players in the NFL, players in Major League Baseball, and talk about, oh, look at those all-stars. We must retrain our minds to look at educators who are handling their business as all-stars, entrepreneurs as all-stars, look at folks in different fields as all-stars. So what we did was we went across the country, we identified with this first grant 5 different stories. I got a second round coming up. I made it clear I'm going to be asking for a whole lot more, because there are so many other African Americans who are running highly successful charter schools where their story needs to be told and folks need to see it. And so we're about to play for you. This is a sister in Memphis, Tennessee. And you will hear her story as to how they run this charter school in Memphis to get an understanding of what a highly successful charter school looks like that is run by African Americans. Education, and one of the things that I think is critically important is to highlight the individuals, African Americans, who are actually running charter schools. Their voices are critical when it comes to this particular movement, so therefore we wanted to focus on them, and so we decided to focus on these school choice all-stars, individuals who are making a huge difference by running schools, inspiring our children, strengthening our communities, and ensuring our future through high-quality education. It's a long tradition that goes back to just after the Civil War, when the first black schools for freed slaves by freed slaves were established. And today, African American educators and entrepreneurs are starting and running some of the nation's best public charter schools. School Choice All-Stars celebrates these men and women who are literally changing the course of our history and showing the rest of the world how it's done.
We talked about starting our first note on first base.
Today's School Choice All-Star is Yetta Lewis, co-founder and chief executive of Gestalt Community Schools, a charter management organization in Memphis, and serving more than 2,000 students in grades K through 12.
What we were trying to solve is to create the next generation that could give back to the community.
My name is Carla Salazar, and I am a Power Center Academy High School alumni, and I attend Christian Brothers University, class of 2020. So when I was in a traditional public school, I think that this is very emotional for me, because I think Power Center Academy gave me hope, and I started to see the leader in me, and I could run clubs, and I could do community service, I can help out. Then I thought, maybe I can get to be someone, maybe I can make an impact.
We have students that are graduating, 100% graduation rate, 100% acceptance in college. But we also measure the community service, what they give back to their community.
Now I'm an intern at Gestalt, one of the Gestalt community schools, Nexus STEM Academy. I love working with them. Right now we're holding a STEM camp for elementary school kids, and they're just excited to learn and want to grow and want to be someone like you. And I'm just like, you want to be like me? Why do you want to be like me? And she's like, and they're like, because you just make an impact in me. And I'm just like, well, thank you. You know, that's what our teachers made an impact in us, so that's what we're just trying to pass along.
We serve 100% black and brown students. over 75% of our students are economically disadvantaged. And we believe the secret sauce is that it is a community effort. You know, it's a cliche that it takes a village, but we really are making that happen, that Gestalt is a village, that the parents' voice matters, the scholars' voice matters.
My name is Kennedy Tuggle. I'm a graduate from Power Center Academy High School. I attend Rhodes College. Being in a low-income community, you don't expect your teachers to care for you mentally, financially, or just caring for you as, you know, as a human being. And that's what the Gestalt teachers did. They made sure I was mentally okay to learn, and that was the first step in me wanting to learn myself. If I couldn't attend a field trip, my teacher got it. And my teachers this was their first year in teaching. I'm like, how can you provide this for me and this is your first year out in the world yourself? And so just knowing that they care and had patience to deal with the low-income students and our problems, it was amazing.
I have many students that have defied the odds. One gentleman who has graduated from our network, he came here as a 6th grader, graduated about a year ago, and he came with his grandmother in hand, forcing him to come to school. I don't want to wear these uniforms. I don't want to come to school. He would actually come to school and run out the back door to escape. But his grandmother wanted something better for him, and so she chose our school to give him a fresh start. He was a bright child, but what happened to him that first year was educators, school leaders not giving up on him. You run out the door, we're running behind you. He did well and stayed in school. He went from not wanting to come to school to coming to school and meeting the principal in the parking lot as he unlocks the door. He graduated last year from our school, had a full scholarship to college. And when he came to us, he said, I don't know if I want to go to college. We don't force that issue, although every child we prepare for college. We don't force that issue, but he is in college doing well, away from home. First generation college student for the family. So he has that ability to change the trajectory of his family and his own life.
All successful charter schools have strong community roots, but for Gestalt, the community is front and center.
Gestalt Community Schools is, by its name, a school that is anchored in the community. When we opened our new school building, Power Center Academy Middle, it was designed by the community. So our families really own the building. It's not the charter dictating what should be in your community. It's the community members telling us what they need. And we believe we're servants, giving those resources and services back to the community. We could have built the auditorium and gymnasium in the school, which means you have to go through layers to have access. This is a separate building that during the day the school uses for its auditorium and performances, and after school the community has access to it for also community programming, and then in the event of a storm, an actual shelter for the community. Through partnerships, we have a Habitat for Humanity. They built 9 homes, and every single home is a family within our network. Because remember, for Gestalt, school and community, it goes hand in hand. You can't do one without the other. And what we realized was housing was an issue for our families. 95% of our students are right from the immediate community. They can walk to school, right? Our schools are in the top 5% in the state, and while waiting list is long for our schools, we serve our immediate community.
I have a younger child who cannot wait to be a part of the Gestalt Community School family. He goes to a traditional school currently, and he doesn't seem to be as challenged as much at his school as he sees the children challenged at Gestalt Community Schools. I'm very active there at the school, and so my son has a lot of opportunities to see how the children perform in the classroom. So he's so thrilled about when he's able to get to the 6th grade and attend a Gestalt Community School.
When you know a child and form an authentic relationship with their parents, and you know them well enough to know that I can't call on him right now, he's processing in a different way, or last night there was a difficult night at the home, it impacts how you educate a child. It impacts how they can access the educational environment. And when you have those pieces in place, what we found out more and more, when students feel comfortable with the adults in the class, they start to feel comfortable with showing you their areas of challenge, and you can better serve them. So they're no longer shy about that. And then on the other side of that, they're able to show you what inspires them. And it takes that compassionate educator that can pull out the passion from an individual child just by knowing them.
My name is Erica Eason, and this is my son, Edward Eason. Edward has autism. He has a severe sound sensitivity. He can hear it all, from the click of cameras, the hum of the lights. So we utilize the headphones to make it easy for him to navigate in the rest of the world. In Gestalt, they had a self-contained classroom. It was a very small student-to-teacher ratio. It was perfect. It allowed him to work with other children, to help and be helped by his peers. They helped Edward to be able to communicate that this is what he wanted, to be able to interact with someone so he wouldn't be so alone. And they've just been wonderful in providing the necessary therapies and the intense therapies that he probably wouldn't get in any other school system. All the teachers, the principals, everyone did their best to make sure that Edward was safe in an environment where he could learn, where he could thrive and grow. So Gestalt played an excellent and huge role in the growth and progress of my son.
Yetta Lewis and Gestalt Community Schools of Memphis, Tennessee are School Choice All-Stars, inspiring our children, strengthening our communities, ensuring our future with high-quality education. I'm RolandS.Martin. All right then. What y'all thought about that? All right then. So let's do questions. Any questions you want to ask? Let's do it. The brother over there, he was the first one who wanted to ask a question. So Amber, I need you to pull your Phil Donahue. Child, where are you going? Yeah, we got it. She's moving. Okay, right here to the right. Stand on up. Now, see, I have ground rules. Amber holds the microphone. Keep your hands in your pockets. There's no need for you to touch it.
Good morning.
We want questions. You got a comment? Hold on. I'm giving the rules. You got a short comment? Fine. If you go long, then we ain't here for your sermons. I will cut you off. And I will do you like I did Paula Jones. Y'all know. Paula White. I'm sorry, Paula White. Y'all know. Don't get cut here in Montgomery. All right. And Wendy. And Bill O'Reilly. And that's a long list. All right, then. So go ahead with your question.
Well, you won't have to cut me off. I'm a politician, so I know what to say and shut down. The question I want to ask is, the charter schools are better than the public school, then what is being done wrong in the public school? Why the public school can't meet up to the charter school?
Okay, so I'm gonna have Wendy speak to that, but let me set this up first before she speaks. We need to stop with it's better than. I'll say it again, there are great, good, and bad traditional schools. There are great, good, and bad charter schools. I want great traditional schools, great charter schools. There are things that a charter can do that traditional can't. I want the option for parents to have both. I don't want them to only have one option. That's what I'm talking about here. Wendy, go ahead. Crystal, go ahead and speak to them. I'm sorry. Speak to that. She mentioned Wendy over here. I'm thinking about my Wendy Williams commentary. Go ahead.
Okay. So a couple of things. Echoing the point, it's not that charters are just innately good, right? It's the idea that for the charters that are successful, the quality of professional development for teachers and leaders, and those leaders being principals, assistant principals, et cetera, is very incredibly effective and very innovative in a way that even traditional colleges of education don't fully prepare our teaching force to do. The second piece is the autonomy. So not being able to, well, being able to make a lot of the decisions for yourself as a staff and a team, those two things are, to me, the most paramount things that make them incredibly successful when they are, because the professional development is not just 2 times a year, 3, 4 times a year, it's every single week. So think about 9 to 10 months of school every single week. Teachers are in workshops broken out into different classrooms. Principals are getting training every single week. That has tended to not happen within traditional schools, as well as principals even getting observed. So the idea that whoever is supervising the principal is coming to that school every 2 weeks to walk hallways with them, to coach them, to train them, to mentor them, that doesn't typically happen in traditional school district. Typically, if someone is coming for a media moment, they might come to be a part of the picture. They might come for an annual observation, but they're not engaged in ongoing adult learning and professional development, which is huge.
So I just want us to caution, because again, that's also buzzwords. Well, if charters are so great, why not this? That's not the issue. Again, there are traditional schools, there are magnet schools, there's homeschool, there's online school, it's all of that. I want us to fully embrace all facets of education. And so if you are a black parent in Montgomery, I want you to be able to say, should I apply for an opportunity scholarship? Should my kid go to a magnet school? Should my kid go to a charter school? Do I want to send them to this traditional school? Do I want to homeschool my child? Do I want them to, does Alabama allow K-12 online school or online learning? Do I want my child to go to online? I want a black parent to have multiple choices for them to decide this is what's best for my child. And I'm gonna give this example before you ask your question. So my wife and I raised 6 of my nieces. The twins, Rachel and Raquel, again, twins, but totally different learning styles. Raquel, correct me if I'm wrong, Amber, Raquel was an auditory learner. Raquel learned by listening. Rachel didn't want you talking. Rachel processed by reading. So here you had 2 girls, twins, with 2 totally different learning styles. So when they are in the traditional school, both of them were frustrated because of how they learn. Rachel was really frustrated because what drove her crazy was the noise and the talking by the other students, because she processed by reading. So Rachel didn't like you telling her stuff. Rachel wanted to read it. Raquel didn't like you telling her to read stuff because she processed it by hearing. And so a school has to do, and this is where assessment comes in. I spent a lot of time in Birmingham talking about individual assessment. One of the reasons why I believe our traditional schools are failing is that we do not have rigorous assessment as to know what's walking into my door. When my media company, when my show on TV One, I sat with my executive producer and I said, look, I need a full assessment of every staffer on this show. Because when we launched the show, it was driving me crazy the first 2.5, 3 years, and it's still driving me crazy because I keep saying, I need to know what you can do great, what you're good at, and what you're weak at. So if you are a weak package producer, I don't need you right now producing packages. I need to build up your skill set to produce packages. But if your strength is writing, I need you focus on writing right now, and I'm gonna do the training to build up your skill set with field piece. I have some folks, I have one person who does not like people. What I mean by that is, now some people have social anxiety disorders. So what that means is, I can't bring her on a remote where I'm dealing with people. Her strength is an office person. If I don't know that, I don't know what I'm dealing with. And so I think one of the reasons we're failing is that when our children go from elementary school to middle schools, the middle schools don't know what they're getting. You see a test score, I don't know what I'm getting. Then when they go from a middle school to a high school, they don't know what they're getting. And so I was talking yesterday, I think someone said in Selma, that some of the schools do a good job of talking to each other to say, hey, these are students you're getting, this is this student, this student, this student, this is who they are, whatever. The assessment is important as well, because if you don't know that, just like, Christian, when you had to do assessments of teachers, you need to know what the skill set was of each one of your teachers to now understand, okay, this is the training you need. The training you need, not, oh, y'all all gonna sit in the same training. And so that's also why, again, a different learning situation with the charter school. Your question?
Yes, I have a question, but I have two comments also. I just want to comment that the Brock brothers they are doing a great job of what they are doing here in Montgomery.
Stand up. Okay, I'm just messing with y'all. I'm just messing with y'all. Just messing with y'all.
Yeah,
go ahead.
What they're doing here in Montgomery, Anthony and Fred, they grew up in my neighborhood with my kids and stuff, and I just want to commend them. And I also want to commend you for bringing this program here today. It kind of opened my eyes, because I was kind of leery of charter schools, because I think I was thinking private school. But when you're here, I learned today that they are public schools, but just on a different level, traditional and charter schools. And so I got a better appreciation of what a charter school is about. And in saying that, I'm a member of the AME Church here in Alabama, and our bishop has put on the board of starting a charter school, which I'm a little bit more inclined to go along with now.
That's fine with me.
Since hearing what I've heard today, but I also want to say
I want you to get her information so she can help your bishop, as a consultant standpoint, plan that foundation of proper charter school.
Sure. And another thing is that
she wouldn't mind the business either. So.
Oh yeah, I know she would. but the thing is, you know, I'm a strong believer in, and I guess the traditional public school. And what I have a question is that I know in Alabama we have the Alabama Accountability Act. And I think that if somebody could correct me, that's why I'm asking my question. Can we take where the state will fund so much money to a person that wants to go to private schools? Is that
right? So
yeah,
all right. So do this. So Amber. So Leslie, stand up. So Leslie Searcy, she is with the Alabama Opportunity Scholarship Fund. So Leslie, so explain to people exactly what that is.
So most of you probably remember 4 years ago when the Accountability Act passed. It was very controversial. But what that act did, there's 3 components of that act which help parents. One of those components is the scholarship program. And the scholarships are funded through the redirection of income tax liability. And that taxpayer can redirect a portion of what they would typically pay the state. They can redirect that to one of these scholarship funds, and then scholarships are awarded from that. So I'm sure everyone's heard of economic development tax credits, historical tax credits that bring Hollywood to Alabama. It is a tax credit just like that. It is a dollar-for-dollar tax credit, except this time, instead of those monies being used to bring movie companies to our state or businesses to our state or preserve historical buildings in our downtowns, these are dollars that are going to help children just like these boys that are here that the Brock brothers are educating, just like boys that are here and all these other children that are around here. So, you know, there's been a lot of controversy about tax credits, and I would venture to say there's not a tax credit in the state right now that is going to have bigger dividends in the future than this very tax credit that has been so controversial. We have 21,000 parents across the state that want this, seeking an option other than the option they have in their current public school system. Parents are getting scholarships from $5,000 to $8,000 each for their children. And I'll tell you right here in Montgomery, and I was actually going to ask a question of our principal. You know, we've got these thousands of parents that want this program, thousands and thousands of children who need this opportunity. And, you know, I ask the question so often, what would you think is the #1 reason parents are seeking this opportunity? Anybody, what's the #1 reason as a parent you want this scholarship for your child?
Because you need the money.
Safety.
Who said safety? Safety. Safety. 80% of our parents say their child is being bullied at school or their child is unsafe. That is the #1 reason, above and beyond the academics. And so when a child feels safe, they're going to learn more and they're going to achieve more.
So I got a couple questions. So let me questions for you, Leslie. First, is there an annual cap on how many scholarships you can provide?
So the cap is on the amount of tax credits available.
Can now explain the tax credits.
So $30 million has been set aside. That's the maximum number of dollars that can be raised in a given year to support the students. The fundraising has been a challenge. We've not hit that $30 million yet.
And when you say raise, again, I'm trying.
So part of my job is to go out and talk to companies and individuals and civic groups and talk to folks about redirecting that liability. So I might come, let's say I might come to your Sunday school class and have a presentation about our program and the schools and the kids, and that you as an individual taxpayer in this state, let's say you pay $5,000 a year in Alabama income tax. You personally can redirect $2,500 of that to our program and help fund the scholarships, and you get a dollar-for-dollar tax credit.
So when we say tax credit, what that means,
it's not a charitable gift.
Right. So that means that if a parent wants to have their kid involved in that, they can't have their kid, let's say, in your program, and the parent gets the tax credit. You are raising the money from other individuals and businesses, and then those businesses then agree to it, and now you have a pool of money that funds the folks who actually want to receive one of them.
That's right. So we have that pool of money, and then parents apply to our program to receive the scholarship. The parents must be low income, free and reduced lunch parents.
So let's stop right there. So when we say low income, what is the cap?
So the ceiling is $44,000 for a family of 4.
So a family of 4 making $44,000 or less can qualify for one of the scholarships.
That's correct. That's correct. And priority is given to those students who are zoned to failing public schools.
So now let's stop right there. Now when you say priority, what does that even mean? Is it 50% of the available scholarships? Is it 80% of the available scholarships? Or is it all?
It means that when you have scholarship applicants, and when you are processing those applicants and looking to make those awards, you must award all of the children who are zoned to failing public schools before you award anyone else.
So if somebody out here, if someone says, oh, I heard a lot of rich white kids receiving these scholarships from the Alabama Opportunity Scholarship Fund, what you're saying is that if their parents are making $44,100, they cannot qualify for this. You have to make $44,000 or less.
That is correct. And we have a lot of parents that are slightly over that income level, and just by law, we're not allowed to provide a scholarship for them.
How can, so someone here wants to try to apply for one of those scholarships, how can they do so?
They need to go to our website, which is alabamascholarshippfund.org. I will tell you there is no more money available for this year. We will be opening the window again in February for new applicants, and all that will be based on how much money is raised so that we can make those awards.
So you say open the window in February, it opens February, when does it close?
It'll open in February for all of our renewing students, and if you go to the website and you put your information in, we will notify you a date in mid to late February when you can start that application. Normally it'll last maybe 2 to 3 weeks.
So you say our renewing students, okay, so let's say there's a parent in here and they make $30,000 or less, and then they apply. So do they potentially bump somebody who already has it? Or if you're in the program, are you forever in the program?
If you're in the program, you are forever in the program as long as the money is available to give that student an award.
Okay.
And as long as ultimately your income does not exceed $64,000 for a family of 4. So the law provides upward mobility for the family.
So to get into the program, you have to be $44,000 or less. And while you're in the program, the parent's income could go as high as 64.
That's correct.
So let's say, so if you're a parent right now, you're at 50, you can't get into the program.
That's correct.
Because you got to get in at 44. So was that because naturally if a parent gets a raise, you didn't want to have to throw the kid out?
That's exactly right. You want to help parents. They're still, even though they may be making a little bit more than 44, they're still lower income. So you want to provide a window for that parent to have upward mobility.
Just a few more questions. So you said how you've raised. What's the highest amount you've raised for the fund in terms of tax credits?
We raised $24 million the first year.
Okay, so you could have raised $6 more million.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And when was the first year?
That was in 2013.
Okay, so how much did you raise this year?
This past year, less than $20,000 was raised total.
20 million?
I'm sorry, 20 million.
20 million. 20 million, so that was a drop.
It's dropped every year. And what we have found, when the bill first passed, the thought was there are a few corporations out there that pay enough income tax liability that this program will be fully funded. Well, what we found out in actuality when we went to meet with a lot of these companies is that they don't have income tax. They've got other types of credits that they're paying, and these large corporations simply don't pay it. You look at Hyundai and you look at Mercedes and you look at all these huge manufacturers that the state has brought in. But because of economic development incentives and tax credit packages, they just don't have the liability. And so that's one of the reasons we went back to the legislature this last year. And we said, look, this program is based on Alabama income tax.
Right.
We've got to have an expansion of the types of taxes that can be utilized. Companies aren't paying it, so let's look at the utility tax.
Okay.
Because all these manufacturers that really like the program, they all pay a lot in utilities. Right. They're major manufacturers.
So what happened to that?
The Senate passed the bill and the House did not.
Okay, now let me go here. So 80% of the students are African American. How is your fund mobilizing and organizing African Americans to help get that passed? And if the Senate passed and the House didn't, how did the House Black Caucus vote on this expansion?
We had 0 black legislators in the House or the Senate that voted on this.
So 80% of the kids getting the scholarships are black.
Correct.
And not a single black state legislator voted for it.
Correct. And I will tell you, during the last session, we took busloads of children from specific House districts down to meet with their local legislators. And those local legislators looked those children in their faces, and we knew legislators that had gone to private schools themselves, that had been able to take advantage of choice themselves. But they looked these children in the face and said that unless we can serve every single child, very much like the point that our principal is making, unless this can be something for every single child, we're not going to support it. And I had one student out of Mobile who was homeless, whose mom cannot read and write, and he stands up and he goes, well, what about me? When is somebody going to say my education is important? How much longer do I have to wait until somebody says that 5-year plan and that 10-year plan is not going to help me get a job and help me get an education and help me make better than a 12 and an ACT?
Okay, so it didn't pass. Does the legislature here meet every year? Like in Texas, every 2 years?
Every year.
So is there a plan to now take that back next year?
We would very much like to see it next year. However, it's an election year. And all the indications is that no one is going to be interested in picking up this piece of legislation this next year.
Can I make
Go ahead.
Here? Let me, there's some distortion going on here. The Accountability Act, now what she's talking about is that she raised money and in addition to the tax credit for 80% of minority students. The Accountability Act gives everybody that tax credit that comes directly from the Educational Trust Fund. That's money taken out, and what you have, the reason legislators don't vote for it is because what you have is white kids already in private schools that are getting that tax credit every year. And that's why they're against the whole legislation.
No, 1 second.
Now, what she's doing is good work.
No, hold on 1 second. Hold on 1 second.
They're against the whole legislation.
No, but wait a minute. See, this is where facts matter. We are not talking specifically about the entire act. We are talking specifically about the Opportunity Scholarship Fund. What she just said was not to amend the entire act. What she said was to amend the specific scholarship fund. No, the scholarship fund.
No, when she's talking about the tax.
No, she's talking about the scholarship fund.
What they didn't vote on was the tax.
No.
She wanted them to say to add more ways of, except for income tax, that the corporations could sponsor scholarships. Right. She wanted the corporations. She wanted the state to say the corporation can use all types of taxes so that they can do that.
Right.
So that's
Actually, it's one type of tax, and it was utility tax. And actually, you're not taking that much money out of the Education Trust Fund. Yes, money is coming out of the Education Trust Fund, but it is less than 0.5% of the entire Education Trust Fund to serve 4,000 children out of 740,000 children. These children aren't getting what they need. They are getting money to be educated. And I would venture to say all these boys over here, if they're on scholarship, they don't want to give that scholarship back. They want the opportunity to go to a school like the Bronx and not go to one of the schools that may have been taken over by the state that's right here in Montgomery.
So here's why Leslie, thanks a lot. So here's why I'm trying to methodically walk through this, folks. Because the danger in these conversations is to lump everything together. Education is nuanced, education is extensive, and there are all kind of tentacles tied to it. What I'm trying to get us to understand is that we have to step back and look at this conversation as, okay, what about this piece, this piece, this piece? Let me go back. Education is a pie. Even in this state, there are slivers of the pie. So if a slice is going to that fund, the question then becomes, okay, how do you expand it to hit the $30 million for that fund? Then when you begin to talk about your trust, then you begin to talk about your per pupil allocation, then you begin to talk, and then even when we start talking about per pupil allocation, we then start going into, from the school district, how much of the per pupil allocation is actually going to education, curriculum, as opposed to salaries, as opposed to buildings. See, that's the other piece right there. So when you hear $6,000, and Crystal, you could talk to this, when you hear $6,000 allocated per child, a lot of us think, oh, that's $6,000 going towards the education of the child, when actually, in a lot of places, less than 1,000 of that, some places $500 is going towards the actual instruction of that child, and that money is being split up into pensions, into salaries, into all sorts of other areas. But that's when you have to begin to break down a district's budget and not just accept, oh, we getting this, and then when people say, oh, we need more money. Last night this happened in Selma. Brother said, well, in 2000, with the Alabama Education Association, he said, well, in 2008 was the last time education was fully funded in Alabama. And I said, what was the proficiency then? He said, well, it was high. I said, no, I need a number. He kept saying it was high. He said, it was higher than what it is now. I said, no, I need a number. Finally, somebody from the audience said it was 4.63% proficient. So he was trying to make the argument that if we fully fund education, we're going to achieve results. But when it was fully funded, the proficiency was only 4.6%. I say that means 96% not proficient. So when I hear money is the answer, I then go, give me the number that you think we can spend to achieve our results. I know for a fact in DC, when they were spending $15,000 per child, they were still failing. Other cities were spending upwards of $18,000 per child, still failing. So when people say it's the money, it's not always the money. It's how you use the money. That's often how it works. Question.
Okay, Emery Kidd from Bessemer, Alabama. I have one quick statement and two quick questions. Number one, I went to something that was sort of like a charter school, the Alabama School of Fine Arts. And in my opinion, this was an awesome school because, number one, the majority of the teachers had a certain educational level, but they were able to teach even if they did not have certification. So from my understanding, charter schools would give an opportunity for people with specialized training to be able to step into the classroom and give that training back, even if they don't have teacher certification. Number one. Number two is this. Currently, the main problem I see that we have as a black community here in Alabama is the way that our educational system is funded, which is through property taxes, which makes absolutely no sense. It is the most archaic system. So if we decide to begin to open charter schools, this is a question, would we begin to spread out money from a district that's already underfunded to go to private schools where certain types of admission standards could be implemented based on cap rates, such as, which has already been happening in California?
Okay, so you mix two different things into one answer. One, I want you to answer his first question, but let me answer the latter question first. First, charters are not private.
I understand.
Right. So,
I know that.
So, if a charter is created, and that charter says a charter school will serve 500 students, then the determination then is, okay, what is the admission process of the charter school? Is it going to be a lottery selection like it was when he was in Pittsburgh, which the way that works, I got 500 slots, and then you put your name in, and then if that number comes up, then you're in the school. That's one way. Others have an admission process. So that's not private. So again, that's how that's determined. And yes, if those 500 students go to the charter school, the per pupil allocation for those 500 students will then go from the existing public school system to that charter school. Those students are still public school students. The money is simply not going to to the Montgomery school system, it's going to that charter operator for those students. But here's another piece that people don't realize. Charter schools, and correct me if I'm wrong, in Alabama, I know how it's in Texas, in most states, are charter schools forbidden to use state those per pupil allocation for construction?
Yeah.
Okay, so, see, that's other piece people don't realize. So a school district can do a bond offering to build a 30, 50, 70 million dollar new school. Mm-hmm. A charter operator can't use any of that that per pupil money for construction, which is why they have to go raise money independently for the charter for the purpose of construction and their building. So again, it's still public, but the money is going to that charter, not to the school district, because if the school district is serving 30,000 students and now 500 are going to the charter, that means the district now is only serving 29,500. The district doesn't need money for 30,000 when they're only serving 29,500. So in Washington, D.C., 55% of all students attend traditional public schools. 45% attend charter schools. That means that Washington, D.C. school district used to get all the money for 100% of the kids. Now they're only serving 55% of the kids, so they should get the money for 55% of the students.
Mm-hmm. So it will defund public schools?
No, it's not going to defund public schools.
As in traditional schools?
No, it's not defunding. You're no longer serving that number of people.
So less money will go into the traditional public schools?
No, if you are no longer serving 500 students, the money follows the student.
Yes.
If you're now serving fewer students, mm-hmm. you shouldn't get the same amount of money for 30,000 when I'm only serving 29,500.
I agree with you, sir. Let's go on to the second
question. So that's
question.
what it is.
Yes, second question. Real quick. Okay, so with gentrification happening in many urban areas, with the lottery program, I mean, not the lottery, but scholarship fund program, a lot of these people that are not indigenous to these areas are moving in and do not want their kids in the traditional public school systems. Would this not serve as a way to fund private school tuition for people who would have never been in the school system in the first place?
Move in all you want to, but if you're making $41,100, you can't qualify for that scholarship.
So would this scenario be true? If you have a person, a two-parent household, who comes in, who is independently wealthy, therefore is not making any money, would their child not qualify to be a part of the scholarship fund?
How do you break down assets? What he's saying is this here. Let's say you have a family that's independently wealthy. First of all, we're not even talking about 1%. We're talking about probably 0.001. So let's say you have a family that's independently wealthy. They're living off of capital gains. They're not actually bringing in income. So their income shows that they're making $30,000.
Okay, so if they're Alabama,
how does a person have to reveal assets for the scholarship fund?
They have got to provide all of their sources of revenue, and
stocks, bonds, annuities, all those things.
Anything that's going to be reflected in your tax forms.
Gotcha.
Your tax forms are what determine what that dollar amount is. It's not what the parent tells us, it's what the tax form, if you report it to the government, that's what we use.
So that particular person you're talking about can't get it.
That depends on the taxpayer. I mean, it's whatever that final number is.
Go ahead, Kristen.
After all deductions.
You had a question about certification. Go ahead.
Yeah. So each state that decides that they want to engage in authorizing charters, right? They determine the policies and the expectations for how charters will run in that state. So what it means is that you might have a state, let's say New York, or Massachusetts, that decides for charter schools, teachers have to have a 4-year traditional degree. They have to have a master's degree in education for a charter. That's what they've decided as a state. Whereas in another state, they might have a stipulation to say you don't necessarily have to have teacher certification in terms of passing the praxis, but you still need to have a degree in the content area that you teach. So Louisiana is an example of that. So there's not a blank, so that kind of dispels the myth that like charter schools don't have teacher certification and training expectations for teachers. They do. But each state has autonomy to decide. For Mississippi, what do charter teachers, what criteria do they have to meet versus Louisiana, Alabama, et cetera. And then
just like they have the exact same criteria they determine for traditional schools.
Yeah.
So Mississippi may have a different standard for traditional school than Texas does. Texas from Massachusetts, Massachusetts from California. So it's not like, okay, well, there's this different charter standard. No, our education is local. States set their own standards. And that's why the point she made, if her education was in Alabama, and then she's now going to Notre Dame, and she's competing with students from Illinois, California, New York, and they had a much more rigorous education, it was because that state had different requirements.
And same thing for leaders.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think
I got a question there, down here, and over here.
What he's talking about is not necessarily the scholarship fund, but he's talking about the tax credit.
No, he actually said scholarship fund.
Yeah, but what he's saying is that they still get that tax credit by saying they live in there, and there's no income tax. There's no income standard.
No.
The tax credit.
Zach,
AA gave a tax credit.
His question was very specific. He said, if a person did not have income and they're independently wealthy, could they qualify for the scholarship fund? And he pointed to her. That was a specific question.
But they qualify for the tax credit on the Alabama AA.
Gotcha. But that's not what he asked. So we asked this.
They qualify for the tax credit, which comes out of the educated trust.
I'm just saying. But bottom line
what he's saying.
They can't qualify for the scholarship.
But they can get the educational trust fund money. That's what he was saying.
Question here.
Yes, I have some question. I used to live in St. Louis, Missouri. We moved back. In the school system in Montgomery, you don't have a choice. They choose where your kids go. When we lived, well, I have a 32, 26, and a 9-year-old. So we got to realize that it was different. I don't know, is it different now? But to make my question is that my son, my 32-year-old son, had a choice. Did we want to go to charter, magnet, art school, dance schools? We don't have that choice here. A board decide where your kids go here. My baby was in kindergarten, and they told me she wasn't learning. I had her tested, found out she was gifted. They asked me, I never did get in magnet school. I volunteer every day after school for I know bad teachers. We do have bad teachers we can't get rid of. I make copies. I do whatever I can for that. My child, when she get in the 5th, I'm thinking about when she goes to 6th, I don't know why I'm sending her to the choice that we zone for. I want the opportunity for her to experience. My baby like to dance. My baby like to do everything. Why can't we have choices? I want choices. I don't want to be set, because at the school we in now, we don't have enough books. We share books. I don't mind making the copies, but what about choices? We need choices. And I just I saw you live in Birmingham. I didn't go to my cousin's funeral because I had to come here and make this statement. We need choices. Because death is real on the streets if we don't educate our kids. And nobody cares about our kids if we don't care. And just because we black don't mean nothing no more.
Go ahead.
So I was going to comment to you, and so when I hear those comments, those are the comments I listen to. Like, I think what happens so many times is that we, as African Americans, we get caught up in the wrong rhetoric. We get caught up in where's the money going? We need more money. We need this fund. We need that fund. We need to have schools where we have excellent leadership. You would not put a mediocre doctor in front of you when it's time to go get chemo or have open heart surgery. I think we need to put the focus back on training, well-qualified leaders. And I think so many times we get caught up in, like you say, all the jargon or the buzzwords, and I just turn the television off. Because I just think it needs people on the ground level working with these students, working with these kids, loving on these kids. And I think we're fighting battles that we cannot even begin to start fighting. Don't worry about that. Of course, we need people at all levels fighting all battles. And I have a really good friend who I always talk to about that. You handle it on that end, but we need educators. And sometimes all of our focus goes there. And you know, we're in a state, and I'll get on my soapbox sometime, we're in a state where we have our African-American kids at sometimes 3-4 grade levels behind in reading proficiency. And we are more concerned in this state with whether or not Alabama, Auburn's winning. And that has nothing to do with us. And our kids are not reading.
And in fact, last night, we had a sister who was one of the few black female athletic directors. And she said, because of the NCAA's new education requirements, she said in the last couple of years, not a single Selma athlete got a Division I scholarship because they could not make the grade. So the problem now, folks, y'all need to understand, for all these years, we've been thinking, well, at least black kids can get athletic scholarships, but because of the state of education and the changing of the standards, they now are losing that. And she said, not only that, she said, as an athletic director, why am I going to send my coaches to Selma to recruit students when I know for a fact they can't meet the NCAA requirements? And so even if folks in Alabama are caught up in Alabama versus Auburn, we are in a situation now where our black students, your black students here, won't be able to play at Alabama, at Auburn, and now that's filtering down to the Division II level as well, which means they may not be able to go to Tuskegee. So this thing, folk need to understand that if we can't get, if only making a 12 on the ACT, so we won't be able to apply to most colleges, and now athletic folks can't get degrees, then what's going to happen? And yet folks still sitting here saying, let's keep our kids in the same system. Ma'am, you are exactly the reason why we're here, trying to create opportunities for choice. Question, go ahead.
Hi, I thank you for the opportunity to have the discourse today. My question to you relates to the complexity that we find ourselves in here in this area that we live in the state of Alabama. I appreciate you speaking to the fact that Alabama is a different animal altogether. So then the question becomes, historically, and I heard you speak to the historical relevance of what we dealt with in the past and where we find ourselves today. But if you look at that and you think about all of the social constructs, the political ideology, and the complexity that we find ourselves in here in Alabama, and I understand that this is a national movement. I agree, we need choice. But then the complexity of it all, knowing that this is the cornerstone where we sat, and we talked about separate but equal. Knowing that in our neighboring state over in Cleveland, Mississippi, they're still trying to integrate school systems.
Right.
Right. Knowing that in Gardendale, Alabama, they made the choice to separate,
right,
and said that a judge made the decision that it was equitable to say that they should be separated.
Got it.
Okay? So I would like for you, please, to speak to the complexity of where we find ourselves and the adequateness of being able to do this, making sure that we are doing the best for our children, but then being able to handle the implications of that historically.
So let's talk about next steps. So in answering that, first, and this is the hardest thing for a lot of people to accept, Alabama is not as different as folk think from the rest of the country. One of the things that I've experienced, not just in the last 3 days, I've heard this all around the country. You're not from here, but this just different. It's not. White supremacy has been white supremacy. Dr. King said he faced a level of hate in Cicero, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago, that he never even experienced in Birmingham. That was a suburb of Chicago. When I moved to Chicago to run Chicago Defender, folks said, you ain't from here, you don't know how things are so different here. I said, And that's the exact same thing they said when I left Texas A&M, went to Austin, Texas. It's the exact same thing black people said in Dallas. You came from here. When I went to work in Fort Worth, when you born and raised in Houston, we different. Every city in America swears they are so different than everybody else. It's not different. It is the same. For 398 years, black folks have been fighting for freedom in America. In Virginia, in South Carolina, in North Carolina, in Tennessee, in Georgia, in Florida, in Alabama, in Mississippi, in Louisiana, in Arkansas, in Texas, in Illinois, in Iowa, in North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, Idaho, California, Nevada, and I can go on and on and on. It is the exact same fight. There is no black utopia in America. So one of the things, and let me just be as raw as possible, one of the things that is the hardest thing for folks to do, and it's been a struggle. There's a difference between having a historical understanding and allowing yourselves to still be shackled by invisible shackles. My observation in listening to folks the last 3 days is that there are a lot of black people who are still operating in mental slavery and there are no shackles. I have seen it. I have literally listened to people and I'm listening to them going, do you know what you're even saying? Last night someone said, well, we're not getting any of the contracts in Selma. And I said, if you have your own charter, you determine who gets the contracts. And they said, but yeah, but white folks still gonna control it. I said, no, you just missed it. I said, you determine who gets the contracts. They literally could not visualize somebody black actually running the whole school and determining who gets the contracts. Crystal sat there and just outlined, no, I did this. And they were looking at her like, yeah, but there had to be somebody white over you determining who did it. And she's like, no, it was me. And it was, I mean, we literally spent 10 minutes trying to get this person to get through their head that there wasn't some white wizard somewhere orchestrating this whole thing and getting all the money. So what's next? First and foremost, the law has passed. So if folk want to keep fighting, I don't like charters, knock yourself out. But the law is the law. It's time for black folks to figure out how to use the law to our advantage. Black folks, you talked about the Alabama County Act, you said it was a bad law. Fine. Guess what? It's the law. The black codes were law. Jim Crow was law. We still said we're going to figure out how to still live in the midst of chaos. So what should happen? First thing, I want you to pull your phones out. I want you to send an email to this address. The address, you can write it down as well, is blackchoice@RolandS.Martin.com. Now, blackchoice@RolandS.Martin.com. If you listen to the live stream, you can send an email too, but I need you to put your name, address, your number, and the city you're in. So here's why. We did this in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Former Sacramento Mayor Kevin Johnson, Michelle Reed, black folks in Tulsa said, we're tired of bad schools, we want to start charters. Kevin Johnson said to the pastor, well, you're going to put 300 people in the church for us to even show up. He did. We went in to a similar format as this. They created a local organizing committee. Anybody here? Y'all know what that means, whether it's SNCC, whether historically we've done that. The people in Tulsa, like the people here in Montgomery, you can create your own local organizing committee, and now it becomes, okay, how do we then go about the process of saying we want to open a charter school? You then begin to invite folks on that particular committee, and then you begin to assess who has capacity. Existing churches entrepreneurs. Somebody might say, I have land to build a school. They might say, let's lease a facility. Somebody might say, I already own the building. We can do it there. You ascertain who is in the best position to start this charter school. Then you decide, is this going to be elementary school? Will we open a middle school? We open a high school. Will we be like Pastor Beavers in Birmingham, who wants to open a K through 8, but initially it's going to be K through 4? Will you use the model that Anthony's talking about, where you do grade level by grade level? That's for you to decide. Then what happens is you got folks like Crystal sitting right here, who's a consultant, who can walk you through the process. What my organization will do, we're not going to abandon you, because like I said, the ed reform movement abandoned Alabama. I have access to the high-performing black charter schools. I want to be able to then say, if Montgomery folks say we want to start one, to then pair you with them, who can then give their advice and counsel on best practices and what things to avoid, because they've already been running them. If folks here say, and like I've been encouraging alphas to open alpha academies, I say, look, I appreciate our mentoring programs, but I'd rather have a school where I'm dealing with 300, 400, 500 than a program helping 12 or 15 on a weekend. So let's say somebody here says, well, the first charter school we want to open is going to be an all-male high school. Fine. We're going to immediately call Tim King at Urban Prep in Chicago. Tim, and we can have these conversations where we bring him in physically, or he has web chats via Google Chat or whatever, FaceTime, whatever we figure it out, to then begin to help folks walk through it. That's the process. We are beyond saying, that's why this is not a question, is school choice the black choice? It's the answer. I'm beyond the question. It's now the answer. So the folks in this room have to decide. And let me be clear. I want y'all to look around the room at each other. Look around the room. Look to your left. I want you to look to your right. I want you to look behind you. Okay, now here's the piece. Some people have left. I understand. That's fine. We got the video, and y'all can share this with them. I guarantee you there's some people sitting in this room right now who are saying, yeah, man, but ain't that many people in this room. Do y'all understand there wasn't that many people in the basement of Montgomery in 1955? Okay, let me say that again. Somebody's probably saying there's not enough people in this room to do what we're talking about. But a handful of people in the basement in Montgomery launched a movement that changed the world. I can guarantee you there is enough talent in this room to open your first charter school in Montgomery. Earlier I was told there was a school board member who was here. Now the Montgomery School Board is not an authorizer, correct? So, they're not an authorizer, they're not a charter authorizer.
I think we authorized one.
So is the Montgomery School Board an official charter school authorizer? So what that means is you appeal, you take your case to the board. Once you put together your packet, then if they choose not to authorize you, you can go to the state. First of all, we want to ensure that before you even present it, you're strong so they don't deny you. If that's the case, now you're on your way. Now, there are going to be people who say, hey, but we could do more. Let me be clear. You can never show me a millionaire who didn't start with $1. We get caught up in, yeah, but, and I hear you what you're saying, if all kids could go, but I can't get to all 30,000 in Montgomery until I get to 1. Until I get to 10, then 100. He said it. They got 90. They trying to get to a 210, what you said? He tried to get there, but he can't get to 210 unless he get to 90. And by dealing with 90, he's refining his process, he's refining his curriculum, he's refining his staff, so he builds capacity. So when he gets to 210, I guarantee you he wants to go to 500 and then 1,000. Now, mind you, while this is happening, if the Montgomery school system keeps doing what they're doing, you keep building the charter schools. And so if you build one is 300 and you have success, and then you say, well, It's an elementary school, so let's build either a second elementary school or middle school. Success, let's build a high school. Now, while Montgomery's over here still doing their thing, if they still failing and you succeeding, you keep building. You might get to the point in Montgomery, you look like DC, where 55% of the kids going traditional, 45% going charter. And I'm going to tell you right now, DC is close to where it's going to flip. Well, more kids will be in charters in D.C. than in traditional if the traditional not handling their business. But you have the capacity right now. It is literally in the room. Look around each other again. The people in this room, you can do this. The question is, will you do this? So what I'm going to do is this here. I want you to send that. Now, understand, I met Crystal yesterday. Crystal drove, first of all, Crystal was not on the initial panel. Someone who told you about the panel? So Mayor Perkins and Selma told her about the panel. Y'all, Crystal drove 5 hours from New Orleans to sit on a panel last night and to be here tonight. The capacity is in the room. The room cannot worry about some unknown white force that's going to stop you from doing this. If they didn't let an external force stop them in 1955, how can we let forces stop us from starting something in 2017? So what you're going to do is you're going to send that email, name, address, phone number, all your information, what city. And then what we will do is we will get with the pastor of this church and others and then say, okay, they will then begin to put together the local organizing committee. Crystal might be the one, however folks decided. I'm not from here. You have to decide what you want to do. I'm here to help facilitate. Then we begin to build from there. Y'all heard me mention Tulsa earlier, right? It was 3 years ago when we went to Tulsa. Their school opened Monday. They were just like y'all, a handful of people in a church who cared about their children, and now their first charter school is opening, and they are already talking about their second, their third, their fourth, and the fifth. That's where we are. I want Dominique to come up. Come on. Not Dominique. Dominique. Who's going to give us the benediction? Dominique. Okay. Dominique's going to give us the benediction. Now, why this is important? Because for the people who leave church early, some of y'all know these people. There's no greater prayer after doing a service than the benediction, because that's the prayer moving forward. If you have additional questions, we can answer your questions after this is over. If you got questions about the Opportunity Scholarship, Leslie's going to be available. She's giving you the website. Again, send the email. Now, if you don't want to be involved, that's fine. We only going to work with the folks who want to work with on this initiative. But I'm telling you, we've already done this. This can come to fruition in Montgomery. I want to be able to come back in 18 months and see a black-run charter school in Birmingham. I want to come back and see a black-run charter in Selma, a black-run charter in Montgomery. The folks in Mobile have been asking me to come, and the same there. And imagine if we begin to take ownership of our kids' education. We ain't having then a historical conversation about Alabama and black kids. We're writing a new history. I'm going to give you one more thing before you leave. I forgot I mentioned. There's a book I need you to get. Write this down. Every person in here, whether you are a child, teenager, or an adult, it's called The Education of Blacks in the South, 1860 to 1935. The author is Dr. James D. Anderson. It's called The Education of Blacks in the South, 1860 to 1935. James Anderson breaks down that black folks had their schools, secret schools during slavery. There was a sister in there who said she was responsible for more slaves being killed than any plantation owner because she was teaching them how to read. When the white abolitionists, missionaries after the Civil War came south, they thought they were coming to the South to find a bunch of illiterate, can't read, freed slaves. They got to the South and realized that 500 schools had already been started before they even showed up. And black freed slaves said, we don't want y'all leading this. We want y'all working with us, but we got this. The reason you even have publicly financed education in the South, Anderson writes, it's called the Education of Blacks in the South, is because freed slaves were elected to the state legislatures, and they're the ones who changed the state constitutions to provide for publicly financed education. White folks in the South had not put that in the Constitution. It was freed slaves who looked like us. When the Great Compromise of 1877 was struck, where Jim Crow was ushered in, they rolled back all of the gains of black folks during the Reconstruction, but they kept it in the Constitution for publicly financed education. Black people are the originators of school choice. We are the originators of school choice. Don't let somebody try to convince you that some Republican, white conservative came up with these concepts when we started our own schools when we couldn't even legally be allowed to read. I'm trying to give us the historical context to provide us a historical framework and a historical backbone to do it today. Not only that, he details that even when they shut the schools down, black folks said, fine, we're going to open up our own school, just what he did. Last point, critical point. White plantation owners needed freed slaves to work the land. Anderson breaks down that black freed slaves told white plantation owners, if you want us to work your property, you got to build a school on the land. That's called collective bargaining. Black folks did collective bargaining before unions even existed. Y'all, we're talking 1863, 64, 65, 1870. How in the world could freed slaves care that much about education and we don't have the same fervor in 2017? Our ancestors have already given us the playbook. We just got to run the plays. Now you got to decide what you want to do. Come on up for the benediction. Dominic, where are you?
Good morning, good afternoon to everybody. Thank you, Dr. RolandS.Martin, and this panel. I stand in behalf of my pastor, Reverend Walter Ellis. Let us pray at this time. Oh, gracious God, we come this morning, first of all, to thank you. We thank you, God, for RolandS.Martin being able to come here today. We thank God, we thank you, Lord, for this panel of educators and community activists. And God, we pray now for these people. We pray for these children as they have already started school. We pray now that you will allow the educators to come in and be able to teach them, God, and have patience to be able to handle with these children. Oh God, we know that education is most important in our lives because it's with education and with your help, God, that we can make it this journey. So God, we pray now that as we leave this place, that you will never leave us, that you will be with us as we travel down these dangerous highways. Oh God, keep us in your keeping care. As Lord, we pray. Amen.
Thank you so much. School choice is the black choice. Mr. Martin's going to interview with Rob Taylor really quick because he's got to go. All of you get your cameras out. Have them ready. You can take. He is good at taking pictures. Just line up over here. And once he does his interview with Rob, come on up, Rob. Y'all know Rob from VAS. Everybody knows Rob. Mr. ASU, the voice of the South. And go on up, Rob. So line on up, get your cameras out. Hi, Emory kid. Hi. I love him. So